We're going to launch, and I will just, you met Nakaya, Steve, and Tom. But Nakaya, I'd like to introduce you, and you can tell people that about how to ask questions.
Absolutely. So my name is Nakaya Rucker. I currently serve as the External Relations Director at the University Library. I have the opportunity and the pleasure of collaborating with Karen, Abram, Anna, Jim Oliver, and some really awesome people on this flagship Friday series. I will be the Q&A moderator. So you'll see me kind of peeking off and checking questions and things like that. So I will pop in and share the questions and insights and comments that our students, faculty, staff are sharing throughout the conversation.
Very good. Very good.
And then, so welcome to Flagship Friday. Today we are featuring Steve Johanns, the founder, board, and board director of the Last Mile Entrepreneur, as well as he is the founder of Villedge Solutions and does quite a bit of work in Ethiopia, Uganda, India, and other developing communities. He is also an Iowa State alum. We also are featuring Tom Brum today as our moderator. He'll make a few comments here in a moment, but I wanted to get started today with our Did You Know innovation, kind of a little background. We do have two events coming up. Today we have Lance LeDuc with Carnegie Mellon on how to innovate an unfair advantage. Lance is going to talk about how you position yourself uniquely as innovators and entrepreneurs to leverage that position in order to get available resources, build relationships, really put yourself in a position where you can go forward faster. And you will hear Steve's story about how he does that exceptionally well today. Also, next week, we have Tony Sardella of Evolve24. He works with data analytics, is the founder and chairman of that company, and Kevin Kimley, who is the director of Ag Entrepreneurship. They will be doing ethical platforms and how young people are driving societal change. Again, a very similar topic about making a difference in the world, being a change maker, and being influential. So I want to start today with our Did You Know fact and just speak to Tom Brum. We'll talk to Tom Brum a little bit about the Uganda project. First, I did want to give you a little bit of background about Steve Johanns. Steve is a passionate pioneer in bottom-up innovation in rural and developing markets. He served at Eaton Corporation in the development of energy infrastructure worldwide for nearly 2 decades before founding his own company in 2016, Very Own Global, to focus on the last mile. And Steve will share a little bit more about what that term means, last mile. He continues to serve on the board of Very Own Global to guide its continued success in India. He also spearheads a parallel initiative in sub-Saharan Africa Village called Villedge Solutions. Villedge Solutions is focused on bringing a great level of turnkey infrastructure to create solar power, satellite connected smart villages, including cutting edge telemedicine technologies that can serve to launch and anchor village hospitals throughout sub-Saharan Africa. In collaboration with the government of Luxembourg, their SatMed initiative and SES, the world's leading satellite company, Villedge Solutions has just recently received board approval by the U.S. Trade and Development Agency to launch a series of pilots in the northern region of Ethiopia to establish smart villages and village hospitals. So that gives you a little background on on Steve Johanns, and I'm sure you will be eager to hear his story today and how he is a civic innovator. He has actually done some innovating right within our ISU community. He started the first Last Mile Entrepreneur Club here, Last Mile Project, with our student fellows innovators here at Iowa State University. We have about 24 students engaged in that who are working on how they can develop and participate in changemaker projects, both domestically and internationally. So you can look on our student website and that will get you connected. Steve continues to meet with our innovators, and we're very grateful for his continued role as well as his sort of intervention as we continue to grow young people interested in change making. So without too much more ado, I will introduce Tom Brum, who is the Mary and Charles Sukup Global Professor in Food Security. He is the Associate Director, Center for Sustainable Rural Livelihoods, with David Acker, establishing a massive program in Uganda that employs 40 people and has recently launched a young entrepreneurship program. He has been with our university quite a while. I have taught confirmation for him. He is like the Pied Piper for students. We are very fortunate to work with him. Tom, I wonder if before we start with Steve, since you two have some Uganda in common, if you might share a little bit about the Uganda program at Iowa State.
Sure. So you probably had no idea that Iowa State is registered as an NGO in Uganda. That's very unusual. Universities don't do that. But we came to that space mainly because of a program that and efforts that we've been doing in Uganda for about the last 15 years. We started small and now have gotten to the point, as Karen said, we have about 40 employees. And the entity at Iowa State that manages all this is the Center for Sustainable Rural Livelihoods. And that kind of tells what we're trying to do there. We're trying to help the people in partnership with them, not as the smart know-it-all, high-income developed world coming to tell them what to do, but rather to partner with them to bring what we can to partner with indigenous knowledge to help them create sustainable rural livelihoods. The area that we are in Uganda is very, very rural. So we have programs that go all the way from helping pregnant women and infants that are nutritionally challenged to working in primary schools through a school garden program that facilitates school lunches, to a youth entrepreneurship program for young adults, to helping farmers improve their livelihoods. So one of the key features is, frankly, student involvement. So we have a service learning program, kind of a study abroad, but a little bit more. That's everything from a study abroad for a semester, spend a semester there. We have a like a mini campus that we built there in rural Uganda. We have week-long study abroads, and then in the summer we have a service learning program. We take a team of students from Iowa State, match them with a team of students from Macquarie University, which is kind of the flagship university in the country, and we go out and work in primary schools. The students teach, they do projects at the schools, and they work in the school gardens. So part of our program in Uganda is not just helping the Ugandans, but to get ISU students engaged in development efforts, in innovation, in making a difference. And our experience over the last 15 years is it turns ISU students' heads around, because it's an experience that like you've never had before. And so we've, unfortunately, because of COVID, we've been put on hold. So we're unable to do the trip. We couldn't last summer, we can't this summer, but we fully expect next November that we'll be taking applications for the summer of 2022. So keep an eye out on campus for what's going on there, and you might have an opportunity to go to Uganda.
I'm sure Steve Johanns will connect with you about the experience turning people's heads around.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly, that's how he describes his experience as well. So, Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you. Please lead us in conversation with Steve Johanns today.
Oh, sure. So Steve and I actually have a connection. His family roots are in my hometown. So I grew up in the little town of Osage, Iowa, up in north central Iowa, and that's where his family comes from. I think it's been a couple of years now that since we first met each other, and I've just been really impressed with the things that Steve is doing really in the space of that last mile, right? All the technology and innovations that we have, but it's the last mile that make a difference to people. So Steve, maybe if you could just share with us a little bit about your experiences, how you kind of got into this space after a successful career in industry, and what kind of stuff are you involved in?
All right, great. No, thanks, Tom. Thanks, Karen, and especially thank everyone for joining. I know you probably don't have any shortage of WebExes and Zooms in your coursework, and for you to step out and join this one, it's a real honor and privilege to have being able to speak to you. So, as I shared when I spoke, I think it was almost about a year and a half ago on campus. And, I'm going to give you my best and hopefully my goal here is for this group today who took the time out. I want to really share with you some things that I think are pretty significant in this time in the world today, and why civic innovation, why entrepreneurship, and particularly why the last mile is critically important in terms of solving and supporting. And so my goal today is to get that point clearly across and hopefully get you thinking and create opportunities for you as you are at Iowa State, which I'm a little biased, but I think is one of the greatest universities on the planet Earth. Okay. But just real quick background on me, so you can get some idea, how did I end up in rural villages like Ethiopia, in India and Sierra Leone and other places. My background is computer engineering. I was really enamored by computers when I was going into college. And so I started out in computer engineering. Interestingly enough, when I came out of college for computer engineering, the computer industry, believe it or not, way back then, it was in kind of a slowdown period. This is before the internet and all the other things exploded. And so I couldn't find a job in computer engineering. And so as it would happen, I ended up working at Westinghouse Electric. So I ended up working for a power and electric company. For those of you who are going to be coming up into interviews and things like that, I literally went into the Westinghouse Electric interview as a test interview. I had no intention to go to work for them. And, but that's where I ended up. And it's a consistent kind of message throughout my life that, there's always going to be a couple doors presented to you. And you might go into one door and it might not feel like the right thing. There's no reason you can't go into the next door. So even though as a computer engineer, I ended up getting trained up in power systems, power, management, infrastructure, which was great experience for me. But I was always fascinated on two things. And when I saw how the internet exploded, before many of you were even, probably, just ideas in your parents' head. But when the internet really took off, I had this passion and thought in my head is, why doesn't electricity work like this? Why doesn't electricity work more like the internet? And why is it that there's so many people in the world that have things and then other people that have not? And what differentiates us? Why can't people in these rural developing markets have access to basic services, basic things that we have? Ability to turn on light bulbs, ability to turn on the internet, ability to use technology to improve their lives, their livelihoods, clean water, things of that nature. And so it's something that just really stuck with me. And so although I kind of got trained up in the corporate ranks of Westinghouse and Eaton Corporation, and got blessed to have involvement in a lot of different experiences, I made my first venture where I stepped out of the corporate world to try my first stab at entrepreneurship when I was in my late 20s. And I tried to start a .com when this is when the internet was really just taking off. So this is when Amazon was just selling books and out of his garage, stage of the internet taking off. And so I tried to, get into the .com world. My dear wife and I, she followed me and we moved back in the apartment, sold everything, took all of whatever I had made in my 401k at that time. And we basically put all the chips on the table. And interestingly enough, many people would look at my 3-4 year path at that time is, while everyone else is taking off, I was still struggling and trying to find my place. with my business plan and things of that nature, but I learned a tremendous amount in that venture. So the other message I want to give you, I think it's really important, particularly for the youth today, is there really is no such thing as failure. There's only learning. Okay, there's only learning. So what some people might call failure, I learned later, it's just a method of learning. It's actually a really good method of learning, because you get to run into something, it doesn't necessarily succeed or do with what you think is going to happen, but it creates more opportunities in the future, which I'll share with you in a second. So I made my attempt at the .com world, and then a fascinating thing happened. We had my son at that time, then my twin daughters were born, and so struggling as an entrepreneur, I had to find some work. So I backed into an opportunity to consult and work for a couple owners of all things, a plastic injection molding company. And the fascinating thing when I got in there and got the job that helped pay the bills is they were working. I found out later, once I got in, they're working on a very top secret project that they wanted me to help with and get involved in. And it was just at the time, and nobody had even known yet, that Microsoft was going to come into the gaming industry. And so the top secret project they were working on was building the prototypes, the boxes, the controllers for, of all things, the Xbox. And so here I got a chance to now work on this top secret project, codename Xbox, which, by the way, I tell people this, a lot of people don't know this, but that was the code name. And they tried all kinds of other names and ultimately landed on the code name. So Xbox was something I got introduced to. And that was my beginning of my relationship with Microsoft. And I met some great people, great innovators, and things of that nature. I ended up, I went back into corporate America. They kind of convinced me that they were creating more of an entrepreneurial opportunity within the corporation, and they needed somebody like with my entrepreneurial approach and corporate experience. And so I went back into Eaton. And I got the unique opportunity when the energy industry was really just starting to transform about a decade ago. You were just starting to see things like solar panels on rooftops and electric vehicles. Tesla was just getting ready to start the company, and you're seeing windmills and all this. And it was a fascinating time because these big energy companies like the Eatons, the General Electrics, and the Schneiders and Siemens, it was all new to them. And so it was almost like a disruption was starting to happen, similar to like when the internet, came, and how telecommunication companies were affected because they just were so big and slow and not as nimble. So we were starting to sense that with these as being a part of big energy companies. And they gave me the chance to start up an advanced energy business inside. I actually pitched it to the leadership to get ahead of this, that we needed to build internally to the company. We needed to build a new way to think about going after this new age of energy, because it looked very different than the old way of energy was getting built, distributed, and sold. So that created an opportunity for me again within the corporation. I was able to be an entrepreneur. Message I would give you as students there is, the reality is in this day and age, you have to be an entrepreneur no matter what you do. Okay. So whether you're starting a company or you're in a large major corporation, this idea of innovation and entrepreneurship is critically important to your development and your opportunities in the world today. Things are moving at such a pace, okay, of change, and you see it around you in the world, that there are no such things as the old way, like your parents used to, have a job, go to work, and this was my 8 to 5 job, okay? It just is not like that anymore. So the way you're gonna succeed as you go forward, and it'll be more, we'll talk more on it later, is you've gotta be in the mindset of being an entrepreneur and an innovator, regardless of what your job is, whether you're a nurse, a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, whatever that is. Be an innovator and be an entrepreneur and think that way and work yourself into understanding what it is to be one. So I tried to convince the corporation to go this new direction or let me do it for them. And as you find in many big companies, it's hard to convince them to, it's like the Titanic, it's hard to turn that boat really quickly. So I went to my wife and I said, I want to try this one more time. I want to step out one more time. And I feel passionate about this, that there's got to be a way that, people in these developing economies and things should be able to get things like electricity. And I want to, I have 3 children. I want to do something in the world that when I'm gone, that they can say, their dad did something. All right. And that was my motivating driving factor. And so I stepped out again and launched, at that time, was very own global. So the idea was, this was just about the time Solar City and Tesla were really early taking off. So, Tesla's worth $750 billion market cap now. I'm talking when they were worth 1.5 billion, market cap. But what I knew, okay, and this is what's really key and critical, again, because I'm speaking to a lot of entrepreneurs and innovators on this call, is to really be students of innovation and entrepreneurship, because it's important to study entrepreneurs. It's important to study how we got from one place to the other, how that happened. And what I knew when Solar City went public, putting solar panels on house rooftops for $800 million, and Tesla was starting to take off early, is it wasn't whether those companies would succeed or fail, but there was a fundamental shift, similar to like when Netscape, many, many years ago, probably before many people's time here, when Netscape went public, it wasn't that whether Netscape wins or loses, who knows, but it was that the internet was here, and it was going to change the way the world works forever. So when we saw Solar City and Tesla, what they were trying to do, what I knew, because I was a student of innovation entrepreneurship, I knew that whether Solar City or whatever happens is irrelevant. But distributed energy, the ability to get electricity anywhere, and the implications of that was happening. And so understanding that allows you to take, certain kinds of risk to, get ahead of that and lead the way. So the quicker you see the shift in the global strategy of what's happening in the world, the quicker you can get ahead of it, and people are gonna come on board. And so I ended up had another kind of key revelation that it wasn't going to be developed markets, because we have plenty of electricity. There's no shortage of it. As a matter of fact, we need to use less than more. And a friend introduced me the idea. He said, "Steve, quit wasting your time on the U.S. Why don't you go to Africa?" I said, "Great, great idea." And being the crazy guy I am, got on a plane to Sierra Leone. Someone had invited me there to look at a project. And so I went to Sierra Leone, Africa. This was at the time that Ebola was raging across Sierra Leone. It was just starting to tail off. But I was one of those crazy guys that had to come home and get the 21-day checkup to make sure I hadn't brought it into the country. But when I went to Sierra Leone, and this will be the theme from the rest of the conversation now going forward. When I went to Sierra Leone, what I saw and what I understood in those villages is that the world was built incorrectly. We engineered a world that does not work right, okay? And what do I mean by that? There are fundamental ways that we've constructed and engineered the way the world works. And one of the basic principles it's built on is this idea of centralized energy systems and large amounts of capital that very few people can deploy. And we've built, based on the Westinghouse, George Westinghouse, J.P. Morgan strategy, this kind of hub and spoke model of how energy and electricity gets distributed. And so when I understood when I went into the rural villages, and I kind of had my aha moment, is that if you go into the rural villages and you just start with a white piece of paper, you start clean slate, knowing how the world's been constructed and how it's worked the last 150 years, you can say to yourself, on scale, that model has electrified 75, almost 80% of the planet, but that's as far as it can go. It can't go any farther, because the farther you try to get in these rural places, the economic cost of delivery goes through the roof. And so they'll never get it, okay? So the only way to do it, an aha moment I had, is that if you start at the end of the line, and this is what I mean by last mile. And this, this is something that I want everybody on this call to take with you and really think about now in your own respective areas of study and everything else you're doing. But if you start in the rural villages in this, what I call this last mile space, okay, you get a chance to look out at the way the rest of the world works, but from a perspective at the end of the line. Now, what does that allow you to do? When you're sitting in the village and you see they have nothing, they have no infrastructure, no clean water, no access to internet, no access to any infrastructure, basic infrastructure, they don't have it. You have the ability to take everything you know and see over there and then re-engineer it to put it into these rural villages, and then think about how you can accelerate that innovation, technology, capability from a bottom up. And what I want to tell you, it's some of the most, I pray for everybody on this call, you have the chance to go into these rural villages. It will transform the way you think about your life. It will transform the way you think about technology and innovation. It will transform the way you think about economic development. Everything you think about will be shifted, okay? And which is why we've started the Last Mile project. But
Steve,
yeah.
I wonder, because that's an important point you just made. I just want to rest in that a minute.
Yeah.
What assumptions were like profoundly undermined when you say everything you think is shifted? What were those basic assumptions for you that shifted from this to that?
Yeah, so the basic assumptions you have are, basic assumptions you have are people like Microsoft, Amazon, and all these big companies will figure it out. So how am I going to do it? So my basic assumption is that they have billions and billions of dollars. If it's going to get solved, they're going to solve it. So why would I take the risk of going out there and doing it, right? The reality is just the opposite, okay? The reality is Microsoft is, because they're spending billions and billions and billions of dollars, they can't afford, they don't even have the resources, the manpower to go spend kind of small amounts of money and have to build this up in pieces and parts from the bottom up. So the reason the last mile is so strategic as an entrepreneur is what's actually happening for me, and it'll happen for anybody that goes into the space, is, the government, so like the U.S. government, Ethiopian government, or the Microsofts of the world, they come to entrepreneurs to take the risk, but they'll stand behind you and support you. So because Microsoft can't, if Microsoft walks in the door to the Ethiopia government, like the prices go up, everything goes up, the cameras come out, everybody starts shooting. But if they say, Steve, you go in, you be kind of like, you put your Navy SEAL team in, you go in, and you go help us figure it out, and we'll be right behind you. You can use our name. We'll give you some money. You go in and get it going, and then and then work with us. Explain to us what you need, and we'll give it to you. And that's the same with SES Satellite and others. So it's really a fascinating space. It's like and when you go there with a good heart, and the other very interesting thing is when you go this kind of last mile space, everybody I meet that's in it, there's kind of three components to us, like consistent and entrepreneurs. One is we're kind of half crazy. We're fearless, okay? Because you have to be fearless to go to these places. Two is we very intelligent people, but they have an ability to connect their heart to their brain. And that's something that's very difficult for traditional entrepreneurs to do in developed markets, because their brain doesn't connect to their heart. Their brain just connects to how do I make money, and not how do I help people. Yep. Okay, so those are some things in terms of assumptions that are kind of transformed.
And Steve, maybe I might add something else, and this is something that I see in the students, and I know both of us have experienced this, that when we go into these developing countries and we meet the people, we find out that they're no different than we are. They're just as smart as we are. They're just as motivated. They're just etc. But we have had the opportunity here in the United States to live in a land of opportunity.
Yeah.
And when they have the opportunity, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
What can be done.
Yeah, it's exactly. That's why I always encourage people. It's one of the most fascinating things when you go in these rural villages, because I've been to some of the poorest places literally in the world, and the joy in their spirit is unlike any. You'll never find it anywhere in the United States. I never have found joy in spirit that I find in these people.
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll time right after you.
Yeah, no, here's the point I'd make to, this is actually, I stirred up a room in Toronto. I'll tell just a quick story on this. I stirred up a room at the University of Toronto. I was a speaker on the stage there. And the question got asked, how do we change the dialogue around the Sustainable Development Goals so that we get more engagement around the world? And there were me and a few panelists were there, and everyone was kind of blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't really affecting, the room. And there's a young man in the back of the room who's now a dear friend of mine. I'm going to show a video of his later. His name was James Fuchs-Madir. And he stood up, raised his hand. He goes, I have an idea how we could change the dialogue around the Sustainable Development Goals. Why don't we change let's just start with the first one. Instead of eliminate poverty, why don't we just change that to eliminate wealth? You could have heard like a pin drop in that room. I mean, the chairman of MasterCard was in the room. Guy from World Bank was in the room. Other people were in the room. Now, I could tell he was serious. Like this gets how intelligent. He was only 23 years old. He dropped that statement. So then what happened is, and this is a guy that, got away from war in South Sudan to get educated and get his master's. They go down the list. Now everybody starts feeling sorry for James. Oh, James, James. And I could look at him. He's getting frustrated. He's like, I don't need you to feel sorry for me. And I can see it. So they get to me. And I said, James, I love what you just did, how you just shocked this room into a brand new reality. Okay. I said, so I'm going to give you my best shot at this. I said, in all my travels in all these villages around the world, I said, I've been to some of the poorest places on the planet Earth. All right. And I said, I don't know what it is, but there is a joy and a wealth and spirit like I've never seen. Okay. So they have the smallest amount of money in the worldly wealth measurement, but the most amount of joy in their spirit, wealth and spirit that I've seen. I said, then when I come home, I go to Silicon Valley and go talk to the folks out there. And I said, within a 10-mile radius, they have, by all measures in the world, the largest amount of capital. They're the richest people, the most wealth in the world. But I said, on the spirit level and the joy level, they're bankrupt. So I said, until the world starts to put together joy and spirit and wealth and spirit and wealth in the world together as a strategy, I said, we're never going to get there. And he looked at me, and he and I are dear friends this very day. He looked at me and said, Steve, that's the answer I was looking for. So that's the message I give in this idea of civic innovation. It's a very an entrepreneurship. It's something that it's transformative, not only in the space that you go into, but when I go into these rural villages, with all I know and everything, I can tell you for a fact, they are there not for us to teach them. They are there so that we can learn and save the way we built this world. They're going to teach and train us just by our engagement with them. They're going to bless us, and they're going to teach us how to go back and come back to the United States and fix the way we engineered and constructed this world. And that's the powerful piece of civic innovation and entrepreneurship that you have an opportunity to engage in.
Wow. I'm almost at a loss for words. Steve and Tom, you all both work in very similar areas. And Tom, I think that you said it beautifully earlier, partnering with Indigenous mind. Could you talk a little bit more about how you build the relationships with the people in these villages who may have experienced other people who've tried to come in and do something similar, or they're only there for a month and then they leave? How do you establish a relationship built on trust, built on collaboration? What does that look like in this field, and what would you say to our students and our faculty members and staff on this call that might be interested in doing something similar?
Well, I let Steve respond as well. I think the first lesson that we learned in Uganda is that we had to listen. right? That we had to hear what they had to say, understand what their situation was, value the indigenous knowledge and experiences that they had, and then we could start a conversation. Not, okay, we're going to come in and help you do XYZ, because we don't know. We don't live there. We haven't been there. We didn't grow up there. And then I think come in with an attitude of understanding that what their experiences are valuable, right? That we aren't the purveyor of all that's wise and wonderful. The other thing that we've done in Uganda is the people there, we've been there for 15 years. We expect to be there, well, we don't know. I mean, our goal is to get out, but the people there know we're not leaving. This mini campus that we built, we signed a 99-year lease on the land. And we are there. We're not going anywhere. And I think that also means a lot to the people that we work with. And Steve, you might have some additional or different perspective.
Yeah, I think what I'll do real quick, since I did bring some video just to, kind of put people into a reality check here right now. So Spencer, I'm gonna cue it up here. Just I want you to be ready, Spencer. We're gonna play the first video in just a second for the group, but I want to give it a little bit of a setup. So, when I realized that the answers lied in this rural village, I got the opportunity. In this video I'm going to show you, it's a quick 10-second video, but what came out of this experience for me transformed this quick little 10-second video, transformed the way I thought about what could happen in the world. Okay, so that's how significant this 10-second video is. But out of it I did, and just hold on just a second, Spencer, because I want to set it up before it goes. Out of it, when I saw what you're going to see right now, I realized that if a light bulb can be turned on in this particular position, this environment, it can be done anywhere in the world. And then the implications that I'll talk about in a second. And the only other thing I want you to know when you see this video, what you won't see is tucked back in this this place you're going to see that this video is shot was a woman. Okay. And I'll talk about her in just a second. So go ahead, Spencer. Hey, Spencer.
This is the joys of technology, right? Because we smoke tested this right before the webinar to make sure everything worked correctly, right?
Yeah,
And then when it comes down to the
screen.
moment.
Let's see, I'm doing it again. Right.
Oh, no.
I love it. I love it.
I can describe it. No issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So by the way, you gotta always be quick on your feet if you're an entrepreneur too.
Maybe we need to have connectivity in this country, Steve.
Yeah. Okay. So what? Yeah. And if it comes up, great. If it doesn't, no big deal. Basically, I visited it's really a slum. It wasn't even a village. A slum in Lucknow, India. Okay. And here, hold on. Okay. So I visited a slum in Lucknow, India, and I asked the people in this slum to take me to the poorest person in the slum. And a particular friend of mine, a partner of mine in India, who was putting in these light bulbs in these very poor rural areas, he took me to visit this slum because I told him, I said, take me to one of the poorest places you've got a light bulb turned on. And so he took me to this particular slum and he showed me a couple of the locations. And I said, okay, this is incredible, but now I want you to take me to the poorest person in this slum. So I want to meet the 7 billionth or 7.5 billionth person, that actual physical person at the end of the line. And he took me to, and I can send later, I can send the links, you can send it out so people can see this. But he took me to her it's really almost a cardboard box. It's not even a house, she's living in. but I was able, but then we saw the light bulb. You'll see when we send it out later, we saw the light bulb. Okay. And I said, if we can do it here, we can do it anywhere. But that led to Tom's point, that led to a whole messaging campaign I started on, and MasterCard actually invited me to speak in Washington, D.C. on this topic. And I started a theme that I called Hyper Innovation Lies in the Hands of the Invisible Woman. And it really caught people's attention, because the point I was trying to make, and this is the point of civic innovation, entrepreneurship, and opportunity you have in the last mile, is that what it takes to solve the problems of the last mile, it's hyper innovation. There's a convergence in innovation. So what we did in these villages, which became so significant, is we started developing technology with some funding from Microsoft and others, where we said, listen, if we got the electricity turned on, we might as well, bring the internet into the same box, and we could turn lights on and televisions, but we might as well connect it to the cloud and turn the internet on and connect up to a satellite, and put all this very innovative solution together. And what you find is, what you're doing is you're having to combine technologies. You have to combine electricity with the internet, with cloud connectivity, with things like blockchain, and so on and so on. And it's really, this is important to understand too, what I didn't even know we were doing. And this is the beauty of focusing on the last mile, is, the reason people don't get things, the reason you can't get things in the last mile, there's this cost of delivery. It's like, the infrastructure is not there. So you can't, the farther you go into the last mile, exponentially your costs go up. And that's why people don't have infrastructure. But if you're able to package things innovatively, affordably, in a simple package, what happens is your cost of delivery your total cost of delivery to bring that in curve goes down, and that means you can go farther and out into the last mile. It's a fundamental principle of last mile economics. So it's just an exciting space, because what you learn is, if you're solving problems for the poorest person on the planet, the gift you're given is, you didn't solve her problem, just her problem. You solved the world's problems, because if it works for her, guess what? It works in Naperville, Illinois. It works in Ames, Iowa, or Des Moines, Iowa, right? So these villagers are teaching you how to do things at hyper-speed technology innovation capabilities at extremely low affordable cost. And and all these things that were happening and are kind of coming to a head. And I'll talk more about that in just a minute.
I think that's incredibly interesting. And as you were talking, Steve, one of the questions that popped up in my brain, and one of the thoughts that I had was like, wow, this is fantastic. The fact that someone is going to these rural communities, creating and innovating this level of change. And I think it's also easy for millennials and Gen X and our younger folks to say, well, wow, Steve is doing it. And that's really awesome, but I don't know if I can do that. I don't know how to navigate that space. So for people listening to this call for the first time, or listening to you speak for the first time, and the light bulb is going off in their brain and they're saying, oh my gosh, this is something that I may want to do, what would next steps look like? And I know there are a lot of steps, but what is the framework that you could give them to kind of enter into this industry?
Excellent. No, that's an absolute great question. So, because this is a kind of a critical component, okay? And if you look at any if you look at any hyper innovative breakthroughs in technology globally, and a lot of it's come out of the United States, you look at the characteristics of it. What's typically happened, like the formation of the internet, a lot of technology that's changed the way the world works. It really starts as a collaboration at the university level and the need of the governments. Okay, so government says we need this super technology that helps protect the way that information communication flows around the United States to keep our information safe and everything. So they challenge people at the university level to go solve these problems. So it's a government university engagement. And then what happens at the university level is, what's great in the United States and it's unique about us, these professors and students are given the ability to go talk to somebody with a few bucks in their pocket, having worked on this very significant project at the university level, get some seed money, and then get companies going and explode, right? Or win, lose, draw, whatever might happen. And that's been the fundamental premise of why the United States has been so good at its innovation. The problem is, and this is where Iowa State is in a very unique position, and Karen knows where I'm going to go with this. But the problem with this innovation model is it's gotten the density of it is sitting in Silicon Valley and places like Boston, MIT. Okay, they've sucked up all the volume, and they're lost. Quite honestly, they're lost in their innovation strategy now, because now it's gotten less about helping people, and it's just got about how you move and shift money around. How do we just buy companies, sell companies, and they're inventing things, and they're giving us things into our lives that, quite honestly, serve no productive value, but their market capitalizations are worth multi-billion dollars. Now, that's not a world that's not the world I want to be in. Okay, what the opportunity is now, and this is what I was wanting to get to, is all these things I've been saying, and I went to Singapore and Johannesburg and Toronto, and I was giving these talks, and I made a very distinct. I spoke in Davos twice. I spoke in Davos, Switzerland, during the World Economic Forum. Okay, and my theme was consistent. The world is only as strong as its weakest link. So if we are going to turn our back on 2 or 3 billion people because we got ours, and we're not going to go solve that problem, we're going to pay a price. Now, I was saying that year after year after year, and then COVID hit. And, unfortunately, everything I said proved true. Because we did not go address this situation before the last 2-3 billion people, because we didn't get them basic health and services, because we didn't get them connected to the internet, because we didn't get them infrastructure, things like global pandemics can start, and we don't even know what's happening and moving around until it's too late. And that is a fundamental issue that's happened. Now, so what's the opportunity for civic innovators and entrepreneurs? So the opportunity is the world now has a number on it, an actual calculated GDP. This cost us X trillions and trillions of dollars to the world, okay? Because we didn't do it. So as a civic innovator and entrepreneur, you're the hottest ticket in town. I literally, and these guys, and Karen knows it, as soon as COVID hit, I started getting phone calls. My phone started ringing off the hook. I started getting asked to get involved in projects, and I 2020 was the busiest year I've ever had in my life. And because I had built these kind of global relationships and had this kind of strategy and kind of knew, I was sincere about what I wanted to do. I'm living on Zoom and WhatsApp, and I'm doing business with people around the world just like this. And we're collaborating together now to go solve big problems to fix the way that this stuff's working, because it has to work better. So why do I think Iowa State is unique? Okay, Iowa State is just a unique environment. We have a special thing going on at Iowa State. We have very little what I call braggadocious pride. We have pride of being a cyclone, but we don't go out there and talk it up. We don't go out there and say how great we are in our businesses. We just go do things. We do them good. Okay. And I know a lot of people, Iowa State graduates, you wouldn't know they had 10 cents in their pocket, but they might have 10 million and you wouldn't know it. Okay. So it's a really great group of people with great hearts. And you've got an academic institution that is built on things like agriculture, engineering, all the basic things that the world needs to re-engineer itself, particularly in the developing economies. So when, a lot of the discussion I've been having with Tom and Jim and Karen and what led to the Last Mile project was this idea that Iowa State could could be in a position to rethink economic development, engineering, innovation, and put the focus in this kind of civic innovation last mile space to allow an incredible thing that can happen, where we go out and we recruit people from these rural villages, very intelligent, brilliant people, to get on planes, land in Ames, Iowa, come spend time with us, leverage our innovation center, leverage everything we have available to us, okay? Work collaboratively as teams, taking ideas and innovation and ideas they have from their rural villages to develop new ways to do things in any discipline, and then help them bring in industry, bring in angel investors, just like they do in Silicon Valley, and get help and mentor and get them going. And by the time they graduate, we're going to have this nice little, like tree already starting to sprout with its roots. And then we're going to get on a plane and we're going to go back and we're going to drop it in the rural village. And we're going to start pouring water on it in the form of capital, mentorship, Iowa State participation. And we're going to create a new economic development model that allows students from abroad to come here and students from here to go abroad. And we're going to reinvent the way we do economic development. So while Silicon Valley wants to build Twitters and make things that puts rabbit ears on your phone for a couple $1 billion, we're going to go solve food security issues. We're going to go solve clean water issues. We're going to go solve, but it's in a format of economic development, getting the university involved, to bring students together and then leverage all the resources to get them. So that's the last mile project. So the long-winded part of that is anybody that wants to be involved in this, get on the last mile project. That's the pitch. Okay.
Tom, I think also what's really fabulous about what you're talking about is we are talking about human development, human capital, right? We're talking about investing in people. And Steve was generous enough to help us build that last mile project as an innovative model for people to come from these communities to have a place to land, partners, do some matchmaking, connect them through our Innovation Fellows program. So they would have a core sort of curriculum where they could learn, and also we could learn with them and from them. And so that we are creating solutions together to then deploy together. And I think that width is really important. It's a different type of mindset, isn't it, Steve? The width.
Yeah.
And maybe you can talk a little bit about that width instead of 2 or 4.
Now, I'm gonna make sure I understand your question.
So what I'm saying is really, we're talking about collaboration. We're not talking about dumping money or dumping new technologies, or like we are the better.
I get it. I understand the question now. Yeah, no, it's an actual, it's not just my idea. I've been blessed to, with leading universities and corporations and a lot of dialogue around this. So there's a lot of dialogue around a new form of economic development and infrastructure development in rural developing economies. And all different disciplines right now are really starting to come to the realization that, some of the things I shared in my talks, over the years, that the secret's unlocked in this last mile. It's commercially smart. It's now, smart for the world. It's all kinds of reasons that it's smart. So it's actually a new way of thinking of economic development, infrastructure development, that will accelerate you in the kind of the global marketplace. So I can't tell you, I can endorse it enough in the sense that I think civic innovation, I think it's the new thing. I mean, I think it is, I don't care what your discipline is. If you don't think this way, I think you're going to get, blindsided or left behind. I think the way the world is shifting, and COVID just accelerated it, is that there is a new economic development model. There is a new strategy. And even the big billion-dollar companies that are starting to fly satellites over Africa and India, they still need somebody to catch the signal. So if you can get there with some solar panels and an internet connection, they'll pay you to do that. And then there's, what can I do once I've done that? And how can I help farmers, increase their yields? And it's just so exciting because it's like you got a white piece of paper. And so the width is, and the key is for the students at Iowa State is, I'll tell you what I would do. I mean, now I'm thinking about it. If I was a student at Iowa State and I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa, or Ames, Iowa, or Cedar Rapids, or wherever, Chicago, Illinois, and I'd reach out on that campus and I'd find somebody that's from Nairobi, Addis Ababa, whatever, and I'd start making them my friend. And I'd say, listen, you got any ideas how we can start a company in Addis Ababa? Like I'd like to get involved in that. I mean, that if I this is what I tell my kids. I'm like, there's going to be more wealth creation and more opportunity on the continent of Africa than anywhere in the world in the next 20 years. So why wouldn't you be involved there? Everything's declining here. What are you going to do? I mean, you can go get a job and make some money, but that's my guidance would be go make friends of anybody you can find in these developing markets and start getting your paper and business ideas together and then join the Last Mile Project and have at it.
Nakaya, do we have a question?
Yes, we do. So we have a question from Dustin. Dustin wants to know, when talking to people in a rural village, how much of a language barrier is there? Have you learned their languages, or do you have a translator with you?
That's a good question. I'll tell you what. So before I answer that question, that kind of sets up the next video. So, is our videos working, Spencer? You want to try the second one?
I can give it a shot.
All right, let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens.
There you go.
Getting our video server is not responding.
Okay, no issue. Okay, so I just gonna. There's another video I can send out that my wife and I had the groundbreaking ceremony. This was just prior to COVID hitting, and in the rural village that we're going to do work up in North Ethiopia. But to quickly answer the question, I'll talk about Ethiopia. The reality is. Most villages I've been to, there's a lot of English speaking going on. I mean, if there's one language they're going to know besides their own, it typically is going to be English. So I've never had any real difficulty, but yeah, I always have a translator with me. So, in the instance when my wife and I showed up at this, it was fascinating. This was her first time to Ethiopia, and we were flying in, and the Ethiopian ambassador to the United States hosted us, and they took us down to the South Ethiopia, and Tina and I flew in on a plane with the ambassador. And as we're landing, we see a huge crowd of people, villagers, and with drums and music and chanting and singing. And my wife looks over and she goes, "They're not here for us, are they?" I'm like, I don't know. It's like, and sure enough, we get out of the plane, and this huge group of people, as we're walking up there, just singing and chanting and welcoming us, and had palms, and they're giving us palms, and it was the most incredible experience. And that was my wife's. She's felt like a queen. She's, it was the most incredible. I told her, I said, "Listen, it's not like this all the time. I don't know if somebody told me you were coming or what, but it was the most incredible experience." But I do have translators with me. By the way, it's another important thing when I say translators. I mean, I have local partners. So any country I go into, you can't. I can't. Steve Johanns just can't say, "Hey, I want to go start a company in Ethiopia. Let's go." So the other key is you've got to find partners that align with you. This is my point I was making about find your friend from Addis Ababa or Nairobi, now India. Is find your partner or friend that has some connectivity and some level of influence, understanding how the governments work and all these kinds of things, because that's really important. So in Addis Ababa, and I'm sure Tom can give you examples of him, but in Ethiopia, I got connected with a phenomenal partner and a friend through a mutual friendship. And he's one of the most significant community influencers in the country. He oversees about 700 churches. He's got a nonprofit that feeds thousands and thousands of people, and he's personally has connectivity all the way to the Prime Minister's office. So he's physically, he's walking me right into the Prime Minister's palace. So that's another key part of this, and that's why the Last Mile Project is really important to create that bridge to help you while you're in Iowa State and getting those connections to help create that bridge. So by the time you would bring something back into their communities, you kind of got their engagement.
You know, and even like Iowa State, we did the same thing. When we first started there, we partnered with an NGO that was doing work in the same space that shared kind of our vision and our attitudes about how to work with people, because frankly, you just can't get off the plane in the capital and say, okay, now I'm going to save the world.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. We're too naive, right? We're operating from our American frame set when we don't understand the culture and the people, etc. So that partnership is awesome.
Yeah.
And Steve, I especially appreciate you saying, you know, find that student from Nairobi or Niger or whoever, and just partner up and learn what you can learn. And number one, they're great people.
Yeah.
And number two, what an opportunity.
Yeah, no, exactly. And but the benefit you have, and again, both the fact you're sitting in the United States and you're sitting on the campus of, you know, you're sitting at Iowa State, and is these countries, they want United States engagement, right? They want entrepreneurs to show up from the United States. So you're kind of top of the list, okay, of what they want to show up. Now, when you show up and you're from Iowa State and you say, we're the #1 agricultural biosystems university, we have a $100 million innovation center, so on and so on, you just elevated yourself from being an American citizen to another level inside of being an American citizen, because you've got this capability with Iowa State behind you and the education, innovation, and everything else. So don't underestimate. I am telling you, because I know I'm a cyclone myself, and I'm proof of it. You take your Iowa State education, everything, and you pitch Iowa State resources that you have available to you and what you've been trained up on, and you go into places like Africa, you will outshine Stanford, MIT, all of them. Because they don't, quite honestly, they don't really care about some of the work that's being done at MIT and Stanford. You go tell them how you can improve their yields and agriculture, engineering, or like energy, electricity. That's what they want, okay? And so you actually have a strategic advantage being from the United States and being an Iowa State Cyclone.
I want, Steve, you make such a really important point, and it's important for us to land on that a little bit for innovators. The mistake I think young entrepreneur and innovators make is it's about me and what I know and what I learn and who I am and what I can deliver. That's a delivery of one. But we are often much more than ourselves. The best innovators and entrepreneurs magnify their capacity by the partnerships that they bring. So if you are going to engage in a project, whether it's domestic community or international community, first thing you do is resource, who else could I bring? What else could I bring? Who would be willing to make me more than myself? And more than just my immediate education. And I think that's really an important lesson that you bring up about being more than just you that's showing up, and reputation too.
Yeah. So it's actually fundamental to this idea of innovation, what you do. I'm going to give you a couple key things. So for the people listening, I'm going to tell you pretty soon, get your pencil out, because you're going to jot down a phrase and it's going to stick with you. All right. So but before I give you that, listen, so the great C.S. Lewis, everyone probably knows Narnia and all that kind of stuff, but there's a great book that C.S. Lewis wrote that really changed it actually, this is why as you're being through education, you want all different aspects. You want to soak it in, not only your engineering book, not only your sociology book, not only your physics book, but read other books that are totally different from your traditional. So when I read C.S. Lewis, I was fascinated by his philosophies, the kind of faith-based philosophies. But he had this thing I'd never thought about, where you just talked about like this ultimate sin is pride. Like if the more you think of self, that's the worst thing you can do. And all kind of bad things in the world happen on self-focus versus outwardly focus. And I found it a fascinating statement that actually changed the way it was one of the big drivers that changed my directional view of the world. And so I had this idea that took me this is how I got to the 7.5 billion person, the invisible woman. Because I had this idea that with that philosophy, I said, so if you operated out of zero fear and zero self-pride, meaning you lived only to help others and you gave yourself nothing to yourself, only to others. So you had zero fear and zero, self-pride. Where would you be, and who would stand in front of you if you did that? Okay, because it's impossible. It's next to impossible to do. But if you did that, who would be in front of you? And I realized I would actually be the person standing in front of me would be the poorest person on the planet, this invisible woman, because I would have went to the farthest reaches of the world to help the person that needed it the most. And that changed. So that was a philosophical thing that changed the way I think, that formulated across all the other disciplines and the way I think I do. Now, this is where you jot this down, okay? That's exactly what Karen said. That this message is the message you need to live by, and if you live by this message, what will happen in your life will be transformative. Okay, you need to be a multiplier of multipliers. Okay, so make sure. So it's very important. You need to be a multiplier of multipliers, plural. Okay, I didn't say multiplier of another multiplier. I said be a multiplier of multipliers. If you build your networks, your relationships, your strategies around this kind of resource deployment approach, what you can do sitting on a laptop like this, which I'm doing today, I'm sitting on a laptop like this on Zoom, on the Zoom calls and things I'm doing with people from South Africa, from India, from Ethiopia, with this mentality, with a good heart, a good mind, connected, multipliers, you can have so much impact. I mean, the amount of impact you can have is actually incredible. So, to Karen's point, just consistently try to think, am I a multiplier of multipliers, or am I a person of one? Okay, at a minimum, you should be a multiplier. Okay, if you're not a multiplier, what are you doing? What are you doing in the world? Don't work on addition. Okay, because with addition comes subtraction. So, one, am I a multiplier? Then the next level up is, am I a multiplier of a multiplier? Okay, that's good. You're multiplying, and then you found another multiplier, so you doubled your multiplication. Okay, but if you're a multiplier of multipliers, that's something beyond exponential, and that's the way civic innovators and entrepreneurships need to think and need to operate. And if you do it with a good heart and a good mind, kind of connected, what you're going to find, and this is strategic. That's what I tell my kids too. It's hard for people to get excited about old people unless you really put your heart out there to them, and really. But people really believe, and they trust that the youth have a certain kind of knowledge that we just don't have, and that you're going to be able to do things that we just don't know how to do. So I said, go with confidence. Younger is better. It's like the more younger and fresh your thoughts and ideas, and the more you are passionate about it, and you go with your heart and your mind, and they see dedication, commitment, and passion, they want to go do good things in the world, you watch how much stuff comes your way. It'll blow you away, okay? Because everybody will get behind you and support you and help you and make it happen.
Yeah, and Steve, your point, one of the things we're seeing with our students is they have some qualities that established people don't have. And what they don't understand is it's not like older makes you wiser and better. Older makes you differently enabled and empowered, usually differently resourced. But younger, it's an and, not an or. And the and often for our young people comes in, one, their awareness of technology and capacity to reach others and magnify even through social media, one. Two, most up-to-date technical knowledge in their field. Three, their a capacity to translate things quickly, to be able to take what they learn, gather information, and immediately turn it into action. So now the other side of that is where we work with the generational divide. If you're a young person like that, and you are magnifying and you are turning things over quickly, you want to attach and attend to people who have experience with infrastructure so that you don't create chaos especially in a developing country. I think that we've spoken about this before. Young people going in thinking that they're fixing a problem, and what they're doing is fixing a trigger. You know, they're not thinking through culturally the whole picture, right? The whole 9 yards. I'm wondering, Steve, can you speak a little bit to that about, you know, kind of the mindset that for, especially as we think about students going in as the problem solver and putting money in things. How would you advise that students go into these environments?
So you have to go into these environments with a mentality of learning. Okay. So there's no way you're gonna, solve the problems. You're not gonna solve the problem. I'm gonna just make it real simple. You're not gonna solve the problems. You're going to collaborate on a solution in cooperation with them for different problems. Okay. We're not going to show up and solve the problem. Now you can, what you can do as a civic minded entrepreneur is kind of make, mission statements of what you want to accomplish. Okay. And this is what every entrepreneur should be doing anyway in civic innovator. You're all, no matter where you come from or how you think, deep down inside, you have some purpose, right? You showed up, you're here for something, okay? And I think most people are trying to always find out, what's my purpose in life? What am I supposed to be doing? Am I doing the right thing or not the right thing? So I think it's really important for you to really look at your life and what you're passionate about, what you love to do, what gets you excited, and make your own kind of personal mission statement. My guess is, and from all my years and looking at this and just seeing who does really well at this, if your personal mission statement is to better some humanity in some way, it's probably in some way directionally appropriate, and it's going to probably be you're on the right track. If my mission statement is I want a big bank account, that's not a great mission statement, okay? Because you can get a great bank account will come if you're pointing in the right direction and your heart and your commitment is. So the more you look outwardly in terms of having mission statements and making bold statements. This is key thing about this. I'll share this with you. When I did Ethiopia, okay, true story. I put down on 5 pieces of paper my vision that I wanted to do a new way of developing smart infrastructure from the bottom up, solar power, satellite, internet, cloud connected, smart housing units, water units, and these things. And I put it on 5, 6 pieces of paper. I went out to Washington, D.C. Okay. I just started talking. I went to U.S. Trade and Development Agency, XM Bank. I started giving them my vision. Now, by the way, I'm not that special a guy. I just showed up and called them and said, I want to do this. And they took meetings with me. And I started laying out, I want to do this. And they said, well, this is great. I mean, we want to support you. How can we help you? And then the USTDA, got involved. And, the gal, the first time I met her, she's a little standoffish, but I didn't give up. And I showed up again. And so she kind of took to me. And then the way I got the USTDA, the United States government, to get behind me, I got them warmed up enough, but they still weren't, diving in to give me the funding. So you know what I did? I took the risk. I bought a plane ticket. I got on the plane to Ethiopia. I made grand statements in the country of Ethiopia with my partners and people. Said, we're going to do this here. And we're going to do a smart village right here. They got some cameras rolling. They got around me. They got me introductions to folks at the Ethiopian government. So I got some good press and things around it. I got back on the plane. I came back to DC. I said, this is where we're doing it. They said, okay, we want to get involved.
Yeah.
So
a lesson, be bold, right? Be
yes.
bold.
Yeah. And and go out there and plant. And all I did is
take a risk.
Flag. Yeah,
take a risk.
Plant a flag and point people to it. And then everybody starts moving towards it. Okay. Yeah. So be flag planters out there in the world. That's my other message I need to do.
Yeah. I would say one of the things that students are seeing momentum is I'm encouraging them to act as if what they see for the world and their purpose, as if it is real. What would you be doing right now if this were already in place and start there, right?
Yeah.
And that's
No,
what we're
exactly.
talking about.
Yeah, yeah. And listen, I don't have to tell you, you guys are living it because you're not on your campuses, you're on Zooms now, and the world is just, I mean, this is almost like biblical proportion in terms of what's going on in the world right now. And you guys are being, affected by this in significant ways. And I relate to all of it because I have kids in college as well. So, but the thing I want you to know is there is hope, and you're the hope. So the key is, the world's got to work better and different. It's been misengineered in my mind. It's literally been a misengineered world. So that's okay. You can have, like, what happens, things become, like in any system or any kind of thing that's been engineered, it gets outdated. And the point I make, and this is why civic innovation bottom up is the way to go, is let's quit tinkering with it, because we're just going to be putting band-aids on something. Forget it. Let's just quit tinkering with it. Just let it run, and let's hurry up and refix what from a bottom up before this thing completely collapses and breaks down. So that's why civic innovation and entrepreneurship right now, this kind of strategy I'm talking to you about, is critically important. And like I said, I've traveled. I've been in 28 different countries. I've given talks. I've been with the chief economist of MasterCard, where they've invited me to speak. I took on. There's a segment where I debated with Vint Cerf, the literal father of the internet and chief evangelist for the internet at Google, where he tried to trip me up on my vision of what the future should look like in energy, and it was just a great experience for me to be challenged by him, and I felt like I came out pretty good on that one. So consistently, I've been testing this theory over the last 7-8 years, so to speak, and it's not getting weaker; it's only getting stronger. Okay. And literally, not corporations I see are seeing the world like this. Universities are seeing the world like this. Governments are seeing the world like this in terms of their financing and funding. And then COVID hit. So, for the folks that are joined us today and are on this, hopefully you take this as a little bit of a strategic secret that allows you to kind of accelerate into new paths and new opportunities. But it is a fundamental way that the world is getting re-engineered right now. We're done. You can't tinker with what's broke anymore. You have to start over.
Wow. Steve and Tom, I want to transition into just a few questions from our students, faculty, and staff, because I know we're running low on time.
Sure.
So Philip has a question, and Philip is asking, where can we go to find people that are working in these areas of Africa, as in looking on LinkedIn, or where would the best place be that you recommend connecting with people? So Philip, I would say Exhibit A and Exhibit B, Steve and Tom, would be a great place to start right here on this call. But Steve and Tom, are there communities within this realm that are meeting and collaborating? And can you kind of point our audience members to resources that might be helpful, projects that you're working on that you might want to welcome in some fresh new faces and perspectives into?
There's a lot of activity around this. Use LinkedIn stuff going on, and I even see a lot of things popping up on LinkedIn now where they're actually having live, community things now because everyone's kind of working from home. So you can kind of get engaged even at the university level. Africa is just so much happening. So, on LinkedIn, one of the things you can do is kind of streamline a little bit. If you go to my LinkedIn page and just see, I'm involved in all these things. And so, go on my LinkedIn page and see who's connected to me, and then anything Africa, India's, Microsoft, it's all going to be there. So that's a shortcut maybe, but, same on Twitter. But yeah, all these things are happening. If you're interested, another interesting way to do it, like I'm very focused on Ethiopia, and so like on my Twitter, I track the Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, all these kind of people on Twitter because they're always communicating new things. And so another cool way you can do it using technology, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter, It just kind of connect to their, this is the multiply, but connect to their connections. Okay. So, but there's a ton of stuff that you can get involved in and learn. And the other resource I would tell you is, look at the U.S. government, like the U.S. Development Finance Corporation is doing some really interesting stuff, and just look at what they're doing on LinkedIn. So link up with the U.S. Trade and Development Association, the U.S. Development Finance Corporation, XM Bank, because they'll be popping up all over LinkedIn with some new thing they're doing or promoting in these developing markets. So that'd be my quick answer.
The other to supplement that was what you suggested earlier, Steve, about finding people on campus to make connections with.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be, and you can do it formally, informally. It's that person sitting in class next to you when we were sitting in class.
Yeah.
There's international student organizations that they love when American students come and participate.
Yeah.
And these are going to be the future leaders back in their own countries. So make those connections now.
Yeah, because what's happening, that's a very good point. I mean, if you've got people in these developing economies that left there to come to Iowa State, and they're in Iowa State now, they're doing it they're not going to stay in the United States. I guarantee you. I know all these different people going to universities. They know what's getting ready to happen in Africa. So they're coming here, getting a great U.S. education, so they can take it back to their country and build companies and do things with it. So to Tom's point, the point I made earlier, find those students, make friends and collaborate with them and find ways that you can help them with your U.S. context resources, to support what they're doing. And then who knows, you might end up becoming a partner in one of their companies.
Tom, so you talk about multipliers, and I'm thinking also each one reach one. Your point about meet with someone from a country, start simple. Because for students, the idea of multiplying the multipliers is really a little bit overwhelming because they haven't built those networks and resources yet. Now they have us, certainly, and we can help magnify and help things go quickly. That's how we were able to do it with the Last Mile project. But I'm thinking, even as you start with one, inevitably you find that network goes pretty quickly. But starting with one is also enough.
By the way, it's more likely than not. I mean, the probability of somebody from a developing market that is on your campus or any U.S. campus, their families have somewhat a level of connectivity in the countries they live in. Okay, so it's not like people are they're just getting and building those relationships with those people from developing markets. That's a great way to start.
And I can speak for my department. I'm in the Department of Agricultural and Biosystems Engineering. Some of our graduates over the years that have come from other countries, got their education here, went back home. Now they're like corporate leaders and major players in the government and presidents of universities. And so these are the folks that are going to be the future leaders in their own countries. And you get to meet them here.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct.
Absolutely. I wanted to chime in with one additional question from Dustin, which was asked earlier. Dustin is asking, do you believe that there is a way to make free energy like Nikola Tesla, the opposite way that JP Morgan thought about technology?
Yeah, that's a good question. So let me just debunk, because I'm an energy person. So and I know people that have proposed free energy. Okay, so let me just give you a simple understanding. There is no such thing as free energy because you have to still build a piece of equipment that delivers energy. So if there's unless you think energy, and I can think and the light turns on and took no equipment in between, then it's free. Okay, but if I use this idea of free energy, I've had these people that don't really understand energies, systems. Some of the people that have been looking at this, there's nothing free if you have to build something to generate it. Okay, so no matter what that piece of equipment is. So no, I don't. I understand. I've studied Nikola Tesla in depth. I understand some of the systems and things that he was looking at the time. But just pure free energy, and until I can think in my head and a light bulb turns on, it's not free.
Yeah.
But what you're doing, Steve, in your smart villages is, while it's not free, it's affordable.
Yeah, so to get to the point of affordability, now this is where you can get free fuel, okay? So sunlight is free fuel. That is God-given fuel. I don't have to pay for that sun ray to hit that panel, okay? That's free. So you can have free fuel, which is what renewables essentially are. And then you have equipment that converts the free fuel to the electricity that's being generated. So then it's all about the innovation in the conversion of free fuel into lights turning on. And that's where that's a lot of where I'm involved in terms of the innovation around solar panel storage unit, battery storage, all kinds of really innovative things that are coming out in that space. And that's exciting space.
Yeah. Well, Steve, Tom, I want to thank you for participating today. You guys have been absolutely brilliant.
Are we done?
I know. Can you believe
Oh,
it
man.
so quickly? But there will be more because we are working with the Last Mile Project at Iowa State University. You can contact Jansen Bunbridge. He is president of the club. He has quite their students meet every Wednesday in the Student Innovation Center. And they are working with Steve Johanns. Also, Tom, I would guess they can connect with you.
Absolutely.
And I think the club is going to actually be interviewing you at some point. So we have ways for students to connect, and I want to encourage you to do that. I, again, want to elevate Steve's work and in great gratitude because he's engaged with us. Literally, Steve is one of our innovators in residence. And the requirement for that is putting your money where your mouth is, basically. I mean, in terms of his time. He meets with us every other week. He just works with our students. He helps us expose us to new opportunities and ideas. He helped us write our project charter. He's been really fabulous. So we are very fortunate to have him. I will mention next week we have James Waters, who's the COO of Basin Holdings and spent 32 years with Caterpillar. He was the production center. He was the vice president of the Caterpillar's Production Center of Excellence, and which led enterprise transformation of manufacturing systems to set the gold quality for standard and safety. He did quite a bit of work with Japan. And note that the theme of his session is don't be afraid to be an idiot. And I can say honestly that applies to innovators in general. Don't be afraid to be an idiot because it's not easy work. It's messy. Don't be afraid to ask the dumb question. But his statement was that's really what made him successful is he was not afraid to be an idiot. So
I love it. That's good.
Yeah. On that note,
well, I mean, it's similar to what I was saying before. I mean, there's not failure. There's learning, and to his. I mean, honestly, in my world, I mean, being kind of half crazy and idiot's a form of intelligence, actually.
Yeah.
So I agree with him.
Yeah, a little crazy is one of the necessary requirements, I think, for innovator.
Yeah. So maybe I just leave a couple parting thoughts, and it sounds like we're wrapping up.
Fabulous.
So again, I just Tom and Spencer and Karen and I appreciate everybody allowing me to be on. For the students that were able to join. I know it's a difficult, challenging year. You guys have been involved in something like the world's never seen, and I can only imagine. I know the impact it's had on our children, and it's just a unique time. But again, there is hope. You guys are the hope. Hopefully, you were able to take something away from this. I mean, the one last message I want to give you, and it's something that motivates and drives me every time, is that no matter who you interface with, no matter who you're talking to, no matter what status they are, from president, prime minister to a college student or anybody, someone on the street, always give people your best. Okay, always communicate, be present, and give them your best because they deserve that. Okay, and you'll be better for it. So, as difficult as now is. There is hope. It's coming around the corner. Focus yourself in the right places. Go out into the world and help humanity, help people, and the rest will take care of itself for you. So it's a pleasure. I thank you guys for inviting me to it, and there's going to be a lot of more to come in terms of my involvement with Iowa State, the Last Mile Project, and what we're going to get ready to do. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And again, be expectant. Steve continues to work with us. We have many great things on the horizon, don't we, Steve?
We do.
Yeah. Thank you. And
Thanks, Steve.
yeah,
All right.
remember,
Well done.
innovation happens anywhere on our campus. And if you're interested in innovating, please contact me, kpacone@iastate.edu, and we will get you connected with those other multipliers. We'll see you next week.
Take care. God bless.
God bless.